While massaging, my stepson whispered this, "You won't believe what I did at the cabin." True story. I thought I was helping, just easing his pain, but then, he whispered something I wasn't ready to hear. The air froze, my hand didn't move, and what I did next still haunts me every time it rains. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. They say the line between comfort and danger is thinner than we think. Sometimes it doesn't scream, it whispers, it brushes past you gently, wearing the face of kindness, of care, until you're suddenly standing at the edge of something irreversible. I never imagined I'd be telling a story like this. That my name, Marissa, 39, second wife, stepmother, caretaker, would ever be wrapped in something so delicate, so shameful, so unspeakable. It started in a quiet cabin, a weekend retreat meant for peace, not temptation. My husband had planned it for all of us. But last minute, a work emergency pulled him away. Only Tyler and I stayed behind. My stepson, 20 years old, recovering from a mild back injury he got while working out. I told myself I'd just keep an eye on him. That's what a good stepmother does. I cooked, I cleaned, I folded his laundry, I made sure he had ice and Advil. Nothing more, nothing less, but something in the air that weekend felt different. Still, heavy, watching. He was sweet, polite as always, grateful in the quiet way that made you feel like it mattered. And I was trying so hard not to notice. Not to notice how grown he'd become. Not to notice how he lingered in the doorway when I moved through the kitchen. Not to notice that I wasn't invisible in that house anymore. Until the moment I laid my hands on his back. That moment changed everything, because in the stillness of that room, in the warmth of his skin and the silence between us, he whispered something I'll never forget. And what I did next still follows me like a shadow I can't shake. My name is Marissa. I've been married to Daniel for nearly 6 years. I came into his life when Tyler was 11, awkward, quiet, all elbows and questions. Back then, I thought I knew what love was. I thought I could build a family from pieces. But families don't always come together cleanly. Some pieces never quite fit, no matter how much you soften the edges. This cabin trip was supposed to be a reset. Daniel had booked it last minute, hoping we could all unplug. Of course, work called him away within hours. Stay, he told me, make it special for Tyler. He needs the rest. So I stayed. I unpacked groceries. I lit candles. I opened windows to let in the trees and silence. Tyler was upstairs, icing his back. Soccer injury. Nothing major, but enough to slow him down. We didn't talk much at first. We didn't need to. There was something in the air that weekend, thicker than quiet. Softer than tension. Sometimes, stillness has a sound. And even though I told myself this was just a weekend like any other, a part of me already knew, something unspoken had followed us into those woods. Something that wouldn't stay quiet for long. Daniel and I used to laugh. Not loudly, not often, but enough to make the silence feel earned. In the early years, he touched my waist in passing, kissed my shoulder while I cooked. He noticed things, my new earrings, the book I left open by the bed. But time has a way of sanding people down. Familiarity turns into forgetfulness. Comfort becomes distance. Now, he walks past me like I'm furniture. I speak, and he nods, eyes never leaving the screen. He sleeps beside me but dreams somewhere else. I used to ask how his day was. I used to wait for him to ask back. One day, I realized I'd stopped hoping he would. That realization hurt more than anything he didn't say. So I became small, smaller than I ever imagined I could be. I filled the silence with chores, laundry, groceries, dishes. I smiled when I needed to. I stopped needing to be touched, or seen, or wanted. Or at least, that's what I told myself. But silence isn't nothing. Silence is heavy. It presses in. It makes you feel like you're fading right inside your own life. And when someone, anyone, looks at you like you're still visible, it doesn't feel wrong. It feels like breathing, like remembering you're alive. That's the kind of quiet I was carrying when we walked into that cabin. And that's the version of me Tyler saw. Not the wife, not the stepmother, just the woman I'd almost forgotten was still in there. It happened the second evening. I was slicing apples in the kitchen when I heard him come down the stairs, his steps slower than usual. Almost unsure. Tyler wasn't dramatic about pain. If he said it hurt, it did. He winced as he walked into the room, one hand pressing gently against the small of his back. "You need more ice?" I asked. He shook his head, gave a tight smile. "Just stiff. Think I pulled something." I nodded, motioned toward the table. "Sit, I'll make tea." He watched me as I moved around the kitchen, not staring, just watching, like he was studying something familiar that suddenly looked different. It wasn't creepy, it wasn't flirty, it was quiet, observant. And I noticed. For the first time in so long, I felt it, that unmistakable pull of being seen, not as a wife, not as a step anything, just as me. I caught his eye once as I handed him the mug. He didn't look away, neither did I. That glance stayed with me longer than it should have. Later that night, I found him lying awkwardly on the couch, rubbing his lower back with a grimace. He didn't say anything when I approached, just looked up, half smiling like he was trying to act tough. "You want some help?" I heard myself say before I even thought it through. He hesitated, then nodded once. "If you don't mind." That moment, it felt harmless, natural, nothing more than concern. But somewhere deep in my chest, something flickered, like a match that hadn't been lit in years. And even though it was just a back rub, even though nothing happened yet, it was the first time I felt the floor beneath me start to shift. I went to the bathroom and grabbed the lotion. Unscented, the kind I used on Daniel's back years ago, when we still touched without needing a reason. When I came back, Tyler was already lying on his stomach, shirt pulled halfway up, arms folded under his head. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, it felt too quiet. I sat beside him on the couch, knees tucked beneath me, and placed both hands gently on his back. He tensed, just slightly, then exhaled. "It's okay," I said softly. "Tell me if it's too much pressure." He nodded. I started slow, working in small circles around the knot near his shoulder. His skin was warm, firm. His breathing settled into a rhythm, slow, steady, and for a while, that's all it was, just motion, just care. But then, his shirt shifted higher. My hand brushed over bare skin, lower, softer. I paused, not because I meant to, but because I felt something shift. Not in him, in me. I told myself to focus, to keep it safe. I moved my hands back to his upper back, but my chest felt tight, my thoughts too loud. And then, without lifting his head, without looking at me, he said it. "I like when it's just us." 5 words. My hands stilled. He wasn't joking. He wasn't testing. He meant it. I could hear the weight behind them, the ache. And the part that scared me most wasn't what he said. It was that I didn't want to move, didn't want to break the moment. Because deep down, I liked it too. Not the wrongness, not the risk, just being wanted, noticed, needed. And suddenly, that small living room felt much too quiet for how loud everything had become inside me. After that night, nothing between us changed, at least not in ways anyone else would notice. We didn't talk about what he said. I didn't bring up how long my hands lingered. But the air between us had shifted. It felt charged, like the seconds before a storm. Everything still looked the same, but nothing felt the same. The next morning, I stayed in the bathroom longer than usual. I put on mascara, brushed my hair twice, dug out the soft blue sweater I hadn't worn in years, the one Daniel never noticed, but always made me feel a little more like myself. I told myself it was silly, that I was just trying to feel human again. But when I walked downstairs and saw Tyler look up, really look, and smile without saying a word, I felt that same flicker in my chest. And I hated how much I waited for it. We spent the day doing nothing. Reading, cooking, moving through the same house but somehow orbiting closer and closer. I started watching myself, how I laughed, how close I stood, how many seconds too long I held eye contact. It wasn't a plan, it wasn't flirtation, but it wasn't innocent either. That night, I couldn't sleep. Daniel texted me a photo of a hotel breakfast tray. No, I miss you. No, how are you? Just a plate of eggs and coffee. I stared at the screen until it blurred. And for a split second, I wished Tyler had been the one to message me instead. That scared me more than anything else. Because it wasn't about lust. It wasn't about fantasy. It was about being seen again. About feeling like I mattered. And suddenly, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. The wife? The mother figure? The woman trying to keep everything together? Or just a woman who was finally waking up inside her own life. It was the third night. The rain had started in the early evening, steady, loud, relentless, the kind that makes you feel like the world is shrinking into just the space you're in. Daniel had called once, a quick check-in, background noise from some hotel bar buzzing behind his voice. He didn't ask about me, just said he'd be back in 2 days. I hung up feeling emptier than before. Tyler was lying on the couch again, same position as before, shirt lifted, eyes closed. My back's worse tonight, he said quietly. Think I twisted wrong in my sleep. I shouldn't have offered. But I did. I can help again, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Just a little. He nodded. I grabbed the lotion. My hands trembled, just a little. This time, when I sat beside him, he didn't flinch. He exhaled deeper, trusted me more. And I wasn't sure I could trust myself. My hands moved slower this time, softer. I followed the lines of his muscles like memory. It wasn't intentional, but it wasn't unaware either. Then, something shifted. He placed his hand, lightly, on top of mine. Not grabbing, not guiding, just there. My breath caught. We didn't speak. The fire cracked. The rain pounded. I should have pulled away, said something, anything. But I didn't. Instead, he turned his head, eyes meeting mine, raw, open, unguarded. Why do we have to pretend? He whispered. It wasn't seductive. It wasn't angry. It was sad, real. I couldn't answer. I didn't trust what might come out. I just stared back, caught in the weight of a moment that didn't belong to us. But felt like it did. Then I whispered, "It's wrong." He didn't argue. Didn't move. He just looked at me like he understood. And in that stillness, I realized we'd already crossed a line. Not with our bodies, but with everything else. The morning after, everything looked the same. Coffee, silence, rain tapering off. Tyler sat across from me at the kitchen table, scrolling his phone like nothing had happened. But I couldn't stop hearing that sentence. Why do we have to pretend? I thought I was doing a good job hiding it, smiling when needed, talking just enough, not too warm, not too cold. Later that afternoon, I got a message from Daniel. No words, just a security alert. Motion detected, cabin living room 9:47 p.m. I froze. We had forgotten about the security camera he'd installed last year, just in case, when we loaned the cabin to friends. I'd never bothered to disconnect it. With shaking fingers, I opened the link. The video buffer spun slowly. Then there we were. The couch. The fire. Tyler lying down. Me beside him. My hand on his back. His hand over mine. The moment he turned his head. The way we looked at each other. There was no audio, but we both knew what had been said, what had not been said. And Daniel had seen it. No follow-up message, no call, nothing. Just silence. A silence heavier than guilt. I told myself maybe he hadn't watched at all. Maybe he didn't understand what it meant. But deep down, I knew. You don't have to hear the words to feel what was pulsing through that room. That night, Daniel texted again. You should come home early. No explanation. Just the weight of those 5 words sitting in my chest like stone. I looked at Tyler as he passed me in the hallway. He smiled, the same quiet, knowing smile from before. He didn't know. He didn't know what had been seen. What that footage had captured. What it might cost me. Suddenly, this wasn't just a line we'd crossed quietly in the dark. Now, someone else had seen the flicker. The shift. The unspoken. And the worst part wasn't being exposed. It was realizing. I hadn't stopped. Even knowing someone might be watching. I hadn't pulled away. I packed the next morning, slow and shaky. Daniel hadn't said anything more since his message. No anger, no questions. But silence from a man like him wasn't forgiveness. It was strategy. Tyler didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he was pretending not to. Leaving early? He asked, leaning on the doorframe as I zipped my bag. I nodded, avoiding his eyes. Your dad wants me back. He didn't push, he just said, right, and walked away. Too calm, too easy. But someone else had noticed. Evan. Daniel's youngest, 17. He wasn't supposed to be at the cabin. He'd been dropped off late last night after his weekend with his mom ended early. I hadn't even heard him come in. But now, as I passed the hallway near the guest room, I heard it. The unmistakable sound of movement behind the slightly cracked door. I paused. Then I heard his voice, quiet, shaky, on the phone. I think something's going on with them. I heard stuff. Mom was rubbing his back and it got weird. I don't know. My heart stopped. He'd seen us, or heard enough. Maybe he hadn't watched, but he felt it. I backed away, nearly tripping over my own feet, rushing out the door before the truth caught up. Back at home, the walls felt colder. Daniel didn't greet me at the door. He didn't mention the camera. He didn't ask a single question. Just sat at the kitchen island that night, stirring his drink like the ice offended him. I sat across from him in silence. And Tyler. He didn't text, didn't call. We had both gone back to pretending. Back to roles that no longer fit. But now, even silence wasn't safe. Because someone else had felt the shift. Someone younger, sharper, closer. And once that knowing seeps into a family, nothing feels innocent anymore. The house looked the same. But we were all rearranged. And me? I was breaking in places no one could see. And terrified that the next crack would finally let the truth slip out. I never touched him again. No more back rubs, no more late night stillness. I closed the door gently, but I kept the memory unlocked. Daniel never said a word. Not then, not now. He doesn't need to. His silence says everything. I see it in how he looks through me now, like I'm a shadow in my own house. And Tyler? He went back to being 20. Quiet, distant. But sometimes I catch it, how his eyes pause on mine just a second too long. Like he's remembering too. But the worst is Evan. He doesn't say it, but he knows. He walks quieter now. He watches me when he thinks I'm not looking. There's a weight behind his silence. And it's heavier than guilt. I tell myself nothing happened. But I remember how close we came. I remember his hand over mine. The look in his eyes. The whisper I didn't stop. And the version of me I thought I'd buried? She's still here, breathing under the surface. Some nights, I lie awake next to a husband who doesn't see me. and wonder if it's better to be invisible or unforgivable. So I'll ask you, if you never acted on the desire, but you let it live in you, did you cross the line anyway? Or is the real betrayal letting yourself feel more alive in someone else's eyes than in your own life? Because lately, I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending nothing happened. And when it all breaks, I know it won't be quiet.